Hey, how's it going, you guys? It's Murray here. Let me ask you something. How has your week gone for you and your family? Have you had any challenges that you've had to overcome, or any that you faced and did overcome? Of course, we all have challenges these days because of the pandemic, but maybe you and your family had issues that came up that you had to deal with together. Were you able to help each other with these challenges? Maybe you helped your parents or your siblings with challenges from work or school or just everyday household things. Now, we know that God is in control of everything and that He loves us, but some people interpret that as meaning that God is going to lift us out of every single challenge we face through miracles or strange events. And we all know that that's just not true. The real miracle of life is that God gives us each other to help us through the challenges. Human beings are meant to work together and to cooperate to overcome the regular issues and challenges of daily life. For example, poverty and famines and disease. These are all things that nature throws at us, and when we work together, we all get to come out on top. Unfortunately, though, a lot of people forget that it's their job to take care of other people and to help others. And we can see the consequences of this kind of thinking. Over half the world is impoverished. That means that they struggle to get the daily things that they need, like money and food and water and even clothing and shelter. And meanwhile, only a very small number of people in this world control 99% of its wealth. That means that a very tiny portion of people are extremely rich. Now, some people, for example Bill Gates, are philanthropists. That means that they're wealthy people who use all of their money to try and help others in the world through various organizations and initiatives. Jesus and the various prophets of the Bible remind us over and over again that we need to be generous and charitable with other people. That means that we shouldn't think that having a lot of money and wealth and material possessions is what gives our life value. The Bible reminds us that God gave us a spirit of charity and generosity because He meant for us to work together to solve these issues. Unfortunately, though, a lot of people forget about this spirit. They become obsessed with keeping what they have and jealously guard it because they're afraid that if they give it away, they'll become poor and they'll lose everything. We often forget that God gave us a spirit of generosity and self-sacrifice. That means that we're not afraid to lose some of the stuff we have in order to help other people. Unfortunately, fear of losing what we have and becoming poor ourselves often blinds us to this, and we forget that we need to be generous and give to other people. But the Bible also has many stories of heroes who practiced self-sacrifice in order to help others. And we're going to look at one of those heroes today. That hero was Ruth, who is actually such an important woman in the Bible that she gets her own book that tells her story. She's considered so important because she was actually the great-grandmother of David, the second king of Israel, who, you'll remember, killed the giant Goliath. Her story is connected with that of her mother-in-law, Naomi. And before we get to Ruth, we need to talk about Naomi herself and where she came from. Naomi was an Israelite woman who lived in Judah during the time of the Judges. Now you'll remember that the Judges were chieftains of the Israelites. They governed the Israelites and led them in wars against Israel's enemies. Naomi lived in the village of Bethlehem in Judah. And yes, that's the same Bethlehem where Jesus was born. She was married to a man named Elimelech, and together they had two sons, Mahlon and Kilion. Now, at this time, there was a great famine in Israel, and food became extremely expensive and hard to find.
Elimelech, tell me that you and the boys found some grain to make bread. We barely have anything left in the larder.
We managed to buy 150 grams of flour.
That's all?
That's all we could afford at the market. Prices for grain have skyrocketed, and they're only going to get worse now. I heard that the emergency grain silos are already running low. Soon there won't be anything left to ration.
Well, at least tell me you found some meat for us.
Here, Mom. These are the rabbits we found in the valley.
Those are the skinniest rabbits I've ever seen.
Even the animals are starving.
Boys, can you please give your mother and I a moment to speak in private? Naomi, I know we've been putting off leaving our home as long as we could. And I've been praying that God would end the famine before we starve to death, but I don't see any future left in Judea. I don't think God intends for us to survive here.
Elimelech, you don't think God wants us to die, do you? He wouldn't abandon us like that.
Maybe it's God's plan for us to leave Judea and find a new home.
But this is our fatherland. Our ancestors have lived here since Joshua led them against the Canaanites.
Mom, Dad, sorry, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, and I heard that the famine hasn't reached Moab yet. Well, maybe we could go there to find some food.
Moab is so foreign to us. They worship other gods, not our God, and the country is so far away.
It's our only chance. Maybe it's all part of God's plan after all.
And so Elimelech took his family to the far-off land of Moab. They found a town there with land where they could build a new house and a field where they could plant crops. But Elimelech's luck didn't change in Moab. Sometime after his arrival there, he died, leaving Naomi a widow. Fortunately, she still had her 2 sons to take care of her.
Boys, you need to find wives for yourselves and start your own families.
Mahlon and Chilion did find wives, Moabites who were native to the country they had immigrated to. Their names were Orpah and Ruth. Now, Moabites worshipped different gods from the God of Israel, but after they had married into Naomi's family, Orpah and Ruth began to worship her god as well, which was the custom of the time. However, they were still Moabites, living in Moab. For a little while longer, Naomi lived with her sons and daughters-in-law in Moab. But their fortunes still didn't change. After Mahlon and Chilion had gotten married, both of them tragically died, and now Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth were all widows together. Being a widow, a woman whose husband has died, was a terrible thing in the ancient Middle East. I mean, losing your husband is tragic enough no matter what country or time period you're from. But in ancient times, women had way fewer rights than they do today. It was harder for them to own property or be independent. And if a woman's husband died, it was hard for her to hang on to his money and property. And that's exactly what happened to Naomi. She lost all of Elimelech's property, his field, his house, and his money. In Israel, this problem was addressed by the law of Moses, which stated that any woman who was left a widow and without male children, or whose male children weren't old enough to take care of her, would be taken care of by the oldest, closest male heir of her husband, usually the oldest brother. And so, Naomi set out for Judah with Orpah and Ruth to search for Elimelech's heir. Now, God had ended the famine that had driven Elimelech from Judah in the first place, and Israel was now blessed with abundant rains that made their crops grow strong and green. But when Naomi reached Bethlehem, she was shocked to find that the people there were as hard as in the famine year. Nobody wanted to take care of the 3 women, and they were forced to squat in an abandoned farmhouse outside of the town.
Girls, I'm sorry. I had hoped that our fortunes would change when we got to Judah, but the people here are as cold and hard-hearted as when I left them. It was a mistake to drag you all the way here. Go back to your families in your homeland.
Naomi, how can we leave you like that? At our wedding, we vowed that our husband's mother would become our mother, and their God would be our God.
I know, but my sons are dead now. And look at me. Am I supposed to have more sons at my age for you to marry? And if I did, would you wait all those years until they were grown men and waste your youth? I'm releasing you both from your wedding vows. You don't owe me anything anymore. Go back to your people, find new husbands, and raise babies. Don't waste your lives taking care of a silly old woman whose best days are behind her.
Ruth and Orpah were heartbroken to hear what Naomi had to say. With a great deal of crying and hugging, Orpah left them and went back to her hometown in Moab. But Ruth was a lot more stubborn than that, and she refused to leave Naomi's side.
Ruth, for heaven's sake, I told you to go home.
Save it, Naomi. I'm not going anywhere. I promised, for better or worse, that I would take care of you. From now on, your people are my people, and your God is my God.
And so Ruth stayed with Naomi in Judah to take care of her. Now at this time it was the harvest season, and the workers were coming out of the towns into the farmers' fields to begin harvesting the grain.
I need grain to make us bread. Listen, there's a custom in Israel that not even a famine could wipe out. According to the law that God gave to Moses, when the harvesters go through the fields collecting grain, they have to leave 1/10 of it behind for people in need. Nearby is a field that belongs to Boaz, a cousin of my late husband. Go there and tell them that you're my daughter-in-law, so they'll be kind to you. Then follow the reapers while they harvest and take all the grain you can find for us.
And so Ruth did just as Naomi had said. On the days when Boaz's workers were out in the field collecting the harvest, Ruth went after them and picked whatever grain they left behind. When Boaz came by to check up on his workers' progress, he was surprised to see a Moabite woman in his field.
Hey, Jethro, who's that woman over there?
That's Naomi's daughter-in-law, who came with her from Moab. She's been here the whole day collecting grain. She hasn't even taken a break.
Wow, that's really impressive. She must be a hard worker.
Boaz was so impressed with Ruth that he invited her to have dinner with him and his workers. Even when Ruth was satisfied, Boaz gave her a bunch of extra food to take home. Boaz ordered his workers to let Ruth harvest anywhere she wanted, and to make sure that they left her plenty of sheaves to pick.
Naomi, look at all the grain I harvest today. Boaz has given me permission to take as much as I want for as long as we need it.
That's incredible, Ruth. Bless the man who has been so generous with you.
Hey, Dad, can I ask you something?
Of course, Jessica. What's on your mind?
Well, you know that new girl, the Moabite?
Ruth, of course.
Well, some of your servant girls are getting jealous of her. They're angry that you're letting her take however much barley she wants.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Jessica. I had hoped that the women in my household would show more kindness to someone who came to us in need.
But why did she come to our home? Who even is she?
Well, she's the daughter-in-law of Naomi, who was Elimelech's wife.
Elimelech. I think I kind of remember him.
You were very young when he and Naomi emigrated to Moab. Unfortunately, he and his sons all died there, and Naomi and Ruth were left without any male heirs to take care of them.
So why is Ruth taking our grain like a beggar? Now that they're back in Judah, they should find their closest male relative.
That's the problem, Jessica. They don't know where to start looking. A lot of people lost touch with their family during the famine years, and many people died. Naomi hasn't been able to figure out who her next of kin is yet.
Well, then why don't you marry Ruth, Dad? Jeez.
Me? Marry Ruth?
Ruth, have you thought at all about finding a husband?
A husband? Not really. I've been way too busy to think about getting married again.
Well, this might be the time to think about it. I'm not going to be around forever, you know, and I don't want to die and leave you all alone in a foreign country.
Well, I guess I hadn't really thought about what would happen to me after you die. Did you have someone in mind?
Well, Boaz has certainly taken a shine to you.
Really? You think I should marry Boaz?
I do. He's a good man who likes you a lot.
There's no way he could be attracted to me. I work in the fields all day. It leaves me so dirty and sweaty. If I were to ask him to marry me, I would need to make myself presentable with a nice dress. You know I don't have one of those.
Well, that's not entirely true.
My wedding dress? You've saved it this whole time?
Yes, I was going to give it to you before you left for Moab. But then you stayed. Listen, put on this dress and do exactly what I tell you.
Ruth put on her dress and went back to Boaz's field after dark. Boaz had been in the field all day threshing grain and had fallen asleep next to the pile so that he could wake up bright and early at the crack of dawn to keep working. Ruth lay down at his feet and waited for him to wake up. When he did, he was surprised to find her there.
Who's that?
It's your servant Ruth, my lord. Could you please give me your cloak to keep me warm?
Ruth, I see what you're doing. Naomi put you up to this, didn't she? You're a loyal person, Ruth. I can see that you'd do anything to help your mother-in-law. You could have left her for an easier life, but you stayed with her and did what she told you. Ask me for anything and I'll give it to you.
Boaz, well, I want you to marry me.
Of course I'll marry you, Ruth.
And they did get married. Together, Boaz and Ruth had a son named Obed. Naomi loved Obed like her own grandson and took care of him while he was growing up. Ruth and Naomi were able to overcome their poverty, and they were taken care of the rest of their lives. All of the women in Bethlehem praised Ruth for having taken care of Naomi, for her generosity and her hard work. Obed became the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of King David. Ruth is a great example of self-sacrificing love. She was willing to give up her entire future to take care of Naomi. And Ruth is celebrated to this day for her self-sacrificing love. She was willing to give up her entire future to take care of Naomi, and she was rewarded for it. Now, Ruth also reminds us that it's important for us to take care of our elders. During the pandemic, we've been talking a lot about how elderly people are taken care of. Unfortunately, it's very easy for a lot of elderly people living in nursing homes or other long-term care facilities to become very lonely or to feel like they've been forgotten. It's even a feeling that a lot of people who live in their own homes get because they can't leave their homes very easily, maybe because they have mobility issues or health problems. And now more than ever, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, elderly people just can't leave their homes or their rooms in their nursing homes, and they're feeling more and more isolated and lonely. At St. Andrew's Presbyterian, we're doing our best to take care of the elderly people in our pastoral care. When people are in our pastoral care, that means that our elders and ministers of the church keep in contact with these people and do their best to visit them as often as they can and make sure they don't get too lonely or feel like they've been forgotten. This Sunday is Valentine's Day, the day of love, and we're going to take advantage of it by making our own gesture of love to the people in our pastoral care at St. Andrew's. As a Sunday school, we're going to make a bunch of Valentine's Day cards to send out to people in pastoral care so that they know that we're thinking about them. All of the craft supplies you need have been sent to your homes this week in boxes, and Cindy Brox is going to join us on Sunday to help us with our craft. Until then, look for ways that you can help family members or your peers at school with tough things that they're going through. After all, we all need a helping hand, now more than ever. So until Sunday, have a great rest of the week. God bless you, and I can't wait to see you all soon. Take care.